YouTube, Dawson Rider here. Time for another Dawson's Ranking video. So in honor of the fact that we got our next main rider introduced with Kamen Rider Gavv, I thought I would rank all the main rider suits. A while back I did my thoughts on all those suits video, but this is going to be a ranking one, and for the purposes of this, I'm only going to be ranking the main show riders from Heisei and Reiwa. I'm not going to be including stuff like Amazons or Black Sun or like main rider-esque like New Den-O or the Geo riders or Showa, just the main new modern riders. Like think of it like if I was doing a Doctor Who video, I was ranking the main doctors only. It's like no Fugitive Doctor, no War Doctor, no random Shoko Doctor, just the main doctors, which includes 2 David Tennants. So that's what this is going to be. So I'm hoping to avoid the actualing, but it's probably going to happen anyway. And there's a good chance I'll forget one, but we'll find out. Also, I want to say that honestly, going over this, there isn't any of the suits on this list that I outright hate. Like, there are some lists where I make comparisons that I dislike some of them, like with final forms. I'm not a fan of the amalgam forms like DK Complete or Geo Grand. But in this one, even the ones on the bottom I don't hate and overall appreciate for what they are and don't mind them at all. So let's start here at the bottom with Kamen Rider Vice. I did split Revi and Vice into 2 because they are 2. And you know, the thing is I hated ranking this so low because I do like Vice's suit, but it is just kind of boring outside of the helmet. Like the helmet I really like because it looks like a Dino hoodie and I think it has a lot of personality and I like the unique aspect of the 2-in-1. But then everything else from the bottom down looks really boring, like an unpainted gimmick figure, and that's just kind of why I ranked it lower. After that is Kamen Rider Ex-Aid. Again, maybe controversial to rank this so low, and I do appreciate the Ex-Aid like ecosystem, because as a big video game fan, I appreciated what they were going for here, but it still looks a little fugly to me. Like, it's over time grown on me for sure, and I appreciate that's like basically a platformer character, but it still always has stood out as a little bit oddball, especially compared to other rider designs I gravitate towards. And it's also a series where I just like other suits in the ecosystem more. Now after that is the most recent entry, Kamen Rider Gavv. Now this could go up and down, it's like very recent so it's hard to tell. And I've said in previous videos, I've seen a lot of hate towards this suit, but it just seems weird because it's like the most inoffensive, just that's a Kamen Rider suit. It's not pushing the envelope, it's not going back to classics, it's just a solid rider suit and I honestly do like it overall. I think it's pretty nice. I like the shade of purple they use. I like some of the different like color grading with the yellow and the silver, and I think that the helmet is supposedly supposed to be a tooth. That's kind of fun. Like, I don't know, it's just a solid rider suit, and I do overall enjoy it. Next up is Kamen Rider Blade. Despite how much I like this series, I find this suit to be just kind of boring. Not bad or anything, like this is pretty low on the list, but it's not because I hate it. I just find it to be really basic. I think it's effective. I don't think it's necessarily like poorly designed where it feels like there's something missing. It's just one of the more kind of bland rider suits for me. Following that up with Forze, maybe be surprised to have this on the list so high, but it's a little bit higher, but I honestly kind of dig Forze. It was definitely the first rider suit reveal I was a part of that I saw have a more negative reaction and also more of a, I guess, negative reaction for me. Like when we first saw the first potato image where someone got tased while taking it, I honestly thought it might be fake, like who knows? But it's grown on me over time, and what I like about it is it's really unique and stands out, but it also has kind of a classic retro aesthetic, and it's just grown on me over time, and I do honestly kind of like this one. Then you have Kamen Rider Build, which isn't necessarily my favorite. I think a lot of my affection for this suit just comes from liking the series, but it's kind of like Gavv in a way to me, honestly. Like, it's got the unique aspect of the way Build works, but it's honestly kind of very double-esque, which we know. But it's very Gavv-like in the sense that it feels just very inoffensive. Like, it is going a little bit back to basics, kind of similar to Double with that very classic rider look, but it's not like pushing the envelope, and it's not too classic, it's just kind of well designed in there. And I overall do like it. I like the Pepsi Rider jokes. I think it's a solid rider suit, but it just can't go any higher than this. Next up is Drive. This one was kind of tough because there's a lot I really like about the Drive suit. Like, it's fairly low on the list, but I actually do like it, and I think they did a good job of like creating the helmet, like with the spoiler, where it could look a little silly, but I think it overall looks pretty cool. I love like the way the visor looks and the way it lights up, and there's a lot I like about it. But the thing that holds it back for me is the tire sash. Now, I don't entirely hate that idea. I think it's actually kind of unique and clever, especially with the gimmick. But just from some angles, the bulk of it just kind of spoils it for me. And that's just kind of why it dragged it down a little bit lower. Next up is Double. Double's just an overall really solid suit. A great back to basics idea, kind of giving a modern retro aesthetic. I think the green and black contrast works really well, and I really like the scarf on it too, bringing it back to basics. It's overall just a solid rider suit, and I don't have anything more to say about it. After that is Faiz. Faiz, I feel the same way about this suit as I kind of do about this series, where I overall like it and appreciate it, but I feel like I don't have a very strong opinion one way or the other that would lean it towards something I dislike or love. But I do really appreciate the look of it. It's got this very futuristic vibe. The helmet gives it this very alien quality that's very unique and standout. Also the light piping. It's one where you see the light silhouette and it's instantly recognizable. And I overall do appreciate it for what it is, even if it's not like a super favorite of mine. After that is Ryuki. I honestly kind of struggled with the placement of this because I almost wanted to put Faiz above this just because the main thing I like about Ryuki is the helmet. I love the way the helmet is designed, having the kind of night thing with the rider eyes underneath. I think it's a cool way of being different, especially after we did two very classic feeling riders with Kuga and Agito, and yet still retaining that very recognizable rider aesthetic. But the thing is, I feel the rest of the suit is rather boring, and sort of similar to like X-Aid, I prefer other suits in its ecosystem more. But with Faiz, then I'm like, I kind of like the overall suit more. I think it's got more going on, but I think in general I just like the aesthetic of Ryuki and Dragon Knight a little bit more, and the helmet just kind of tipped it over the top. After that, 01, a series where overall I'm disappointed I don't like the show more just because I really love the suit designs overall in this series, and I really love the 01 suit. I think it's a very solid rider suit. I talked about in my thoughts on video how I thought it was interesting that every time we enter a new era, they kind of go back to the basics but try to reinvent it in a different modern lens, whereas Kuga was just literally modernizing it, and then Double was kind of going back to basics but also a little bit modern but kind of sticking even closer to that core aesthetic. And then this was kind of like, let's go back to the core aesthetic of Rider, but what if it was like from the year 3000? And I think it accomplished that really well. I really like the look of that. I love the idea of, it's not from the future, but that it looks like a Rider from the future, and the bright yellow color definitely makes it stand out. It's definitely one that I've always really liked, despite not caring for the show all that much. Then you have Revi, the other half of Revice. I have always appreciated this suit. In particular, something I've talked about in the past is I love the juxtaposition of the brighter colors with the pink and the blue and the mean look of it. Like, I'm surprised they let it look so mean, and I really appreciated that. I really liked that. I think it worked very well. Next up, Decade. Decade overall, or Decade, the ecosystem of those suits is relatively small, and most of them I'm not that big of a fan of, but I do like the base form suit. I think it's very effective, it's very unique, it's kind of this suit that lends to being kind of a template for these legend transformations, but also stands out on its own, and I think somehow conveys the badassery. And again, I love the juxtaposition of the pink, or excuse me, the magenta with sort of badass character. I really like that. Then is Saber. Saber is probably one of my favorite like ecosystem of suits in terms of not only him, but all the others. And the Saber design took me a while to like grow on. That sounded weird the way I put that. But it took me a while just because I did like it, but it was one of those ones that felt like it was one click away from liking it. But the more that we kind of lived with it for the year it was on, I really grew to like it. It's maybe a little bit busy, but I think it's overall still pretty cool, and I love the contrast of the red and white. I think it conveys both themes very well. It has this very, night-like feel, and yet this very storybook feel to it, and I think it's a really strong design that I really like a lot. Next up is the classic Kuga. This is just a very well-designed suit. I talked about this a lot in my thoughts on video, but they just really did a good job with this one where, I think it just holds up. Like if Kuga were to not exist in the year 2000 and after Gavv this was announced, it would hold up. It wouldn't feel dated or anything. I think they did an excellent job updating the core rider aesthetic, but making it feel modern, where it simultaneously feels like this was designed in the 2000s to be modern, but it doesn't feel dated at all, at least in my opinion. The only thing that kind of holds it back is the kind of muscly aspects. Reminds me of 90s muscly figures, and that's kind of the only thing. Then after that is Geo. I really like Geo. Not the series. Well, I've softened on it, but I really like the suits. And Geo's ecosystem, I'm using the word ecosystem a lot in this video, but that's just how we're rolling. But Geo is an interesting ecosystem of rider suits because I feel it's almost equally divided between suits that I really like and suits that I am not a fan of in terms of their approach. Like Geo and Geetz's suit, Waz's suit, Geo 2, whatever, are all great suits, and then you have the weird amalgams like Grand Geo and Trinity, and even some of the ability forms with honking phones on their shoulders. It's just such a funny series because very rarely do you have it where it's so split down the middle. But anyway, his main form, I think, is very well designed. The contrasting gray and dark grays or black and pink works really well, and I think that they're very intelligently designed with the watch theme, both with the kind of band on the chest, and then you have the faces of the clock, or the hands of the clock, excuse me, on his face. I just think that's really well designed. Despite my mixed feelings on the series, in particular with the two main rider suits in the series, I hate to use this term, they cooked. Next up, O's. O's, I really like O's. I think it's very well done, very bright and colorful. It has a lot going on, but yet it doesn't feel over-designed. I think the distinct sort of red, yellow, green color stands out very well, and I love that each form kind of has a different ability, or each section, like the tiger claws. Again, why do you need a sword when you have tiger claws? It's just very well designed. I do find it funny though that like with some of the creative uses of like the compound eyes and other forms, that his eyes are just like, hey, these are just compound bird eyes. Next up, Agito, probably my favorite like modern classic feeling suit of these in terms of going back to basics. There's just something I like a little bit more about it. The kind of muscly armor aspects were toned down a little bit. It's got this very sleek, tight, well-designed feel. I like that it's a dragon, but it definitely very much feels like it's just a bug. Like, I don't know, Agito just works for me when I'm just comparing all the very classic feeling Core Rider suits. You have Gotchard, and you know, despite how much I'm not a fan of the series, and especially the man behind this suit, this was just a great suit. And like before I got disappointed by the show, riding the Rider hype I was on when I was catching up on Geats, this was such a cool suit to see, because I realized going through these suit videos, whether it's ranking or thoughts on videos, that I'm a sucker for a good modern retro aesthetic. And this kind of combined that, but with other things. Like it kind of goes back to basics and has that modern retro feel, but you also have a bit of a steampunk vibe. You got the goggles incorporated, which automatically makes me think of stuff like Caramel Silver or Digimon. I also love the shade of blue they use and how it shines. Even though I'm not a fan of the series, this is a really great suit, and honestly a great overall ecosystem of suits. Then you have Kabuto, and there's one main reason this ranks so high: Borg! Blast! I'm a big fan of the big bad Beetleborgs metallic suits. Like, that was one of the shows I watched when I was younger. Still have a lot of nostalgia and fondness for it, but in general, I've always really loved those suits. And the fact that these were designed by the same guy, and this looks like a modern Beetleborg, just looks great. Like, I would unironically love a Beetleborgs revival series with these suits, both because I'd be curious to see what it would be like, and it would drive the purists nuts. It would be glorious. But yeah, I love this suit because I love the Beetleborg suit designs, and this is just like a natural, modern aesthetic, like, evolution of it. Next up, Den-O. I just really like Den-O. I think it's very well designed. I have a lot of nostalgia for it. It was the second Rider series I watched. I think technically the first I completed because I finished it before Kiva finished. I'm not sure, the timeline's kind of messy, hence Den-O. But I just really love this suit. I think it's very effective, it's very slick, not over-designed. I think that they incorporated the peach visor very well, where you can tell what it is, but if you didn't know, you wouldn't notice it. It conveys that futuristic time travel-y vibe very well, and it very much reminds me of when I was first getting into Rider and just seeing this image a lot around and seeing the Sochaku Henshins, deciding if I wanted to buy one. I just have always had a fondness for this suit. After that, Gaim, I mean, it's a very successful armored orange samurai. What's not to love? This is just very well done. I mean, when we saw the picture of Gaim, or the first poster in general, a lot of us assumed it was going to be just silly and stupid, and it wound up being very intriguing. But setting that aside, I think that they did a good job of having a suit that's based off an orange actually look badass, where you can take it seriously, and it just works really well. And the blue and orange contrast is always two colors that go great together. Yeah, just really like this one. Now, coming in for the top 5 is Wizard. I said this, I think, in my thoughts on video, but Wizard is one of the sexiest main Rider suits. It's just so well done. It incorporates that jewel theme so well with like the magician magical wizard theme that it looks like a very slick, modern wizard, which is obviously what they're going for. It just so well designed. Like, man, I just love this suit. After that, Hibiki. I've always been a big fan of Hibiki. I've mentioned this in previous videos, but I don't know what the current read on Hibiki is on the modern fandom. But I think the suit definitely still looks like a Rider, and I love the shade of purple they use. In particular, with some of the lighting and cinematography in Hibiki, it just looks beautiful. And you know, one of the main themes of Rider, to one degree or another, is using evil to fight evil, because their powers are in some way related to, or tied to, or come from the villains. It's a little bit, I don't remember how that works in Hibiki, but the more demonic look of this suit, but yet still heroic, kind of just sells that point for me, and that's something else I've always really liked about that. Like this demonic, heroic looking thing, kind of using evil to fight evil, and it's just a great looking suit. Now, for the top 3, we have Geats. I love the Geats suit. Again, I'm a sucker for a good white toku suit, and this one is just so well done. You know, the kitsune aspect, I really like that as well, but the slick, futuristic look of it, the contrast of the red and the white on there. I have said in the past, despite the fact that the boost legs definitely work, I do prefer it when it's just Magnum. I don't know why, like I just like it a little bit more simple, but still, just in general, this is a top tier suit for me. But then for the runner-up, and this was tough because these top three I really do love, but the runner-up for me is Ghost, another series where I'm not a big fan of the series, but I love the aesthetics of overall all the suit designs. But this in particular just hits a lot of buttons for me. You know, this isn't an original take, but I'm a big fall Halloween type person, horror movie season, all that. And the fact that this looks like a jack-o'-lantern, on top of that you have the hoodie, which is my favorite type of clothes to wear. It's like it was perfectly designed for me, and I was really hoping this would be a more spooky season. Unfortunately it wasn't, but the suit is one I still love, and I still always put out my Ghost figure with my Halloween decorations every year. Coming in at number 1 is Kiva. I just had to give it to this one. Not only was this the one that inspired me to finally watch Rider, but again, big horror movie fan. It just instantly had that vibe. This series definitely had more of that spooky vibe, but in general, it's just so badass. The use of the compound eyes just works so well. The sort of chained metal jacket, the ruby dark blood red color, it's just such a badass design. It definitely is still my favorite, and the fact that it was when I saw the first image of it that inspired me to finally dive into Rider definitely helps. But that is just my list. Let me know your list in the comments. It's a lot to list. If you just want to do top 5, top 10, that's cool too. But until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for my videos. Dawson Rider, signing out.